You ever thought to yourself at the end of the month, where in the world did all my money go? As a person who grew up with a parent who didn't have a lot of money, or struggled with money a lot of times most of their life, one of the things I learned early on when I got into adulthood was I got to have a budget because I didn't even know how to do it. Plus, I never wanted to run out of money. So, as a teacher, one of the things I talk to my students a lot about is where's your money going to go when you're in college, and then when you get out of college. And even as a young adult, I think it's so important to understand what our budgets are. So if you're constantly wondering where your money goes, this is a good video to figure out why and where. I think the hard part most people don't understand is how to create an easy budget. As an accountant, sometimes I take for granted how easy it is, both for my businesses and for myself. Now I've got a family of seven, and with the way things are with inflation, it gets insane. So constantly trying to figure out, how can we save a little bit more? We need to bring more money in, obviously, but if we can save some money, that'd be even better. So let me show you something real quick. I put together what I consider to be an easy spreadsheet. And right here, I've got, let's get it going. Okay. So this is a simple budget that I put together. Now, this is really for a person who's probably newly out of college. But you really can do this for anybody, especially once you understand the basics of actually creating a budget. You can always add and subtract whatever you want. So let's kind of get this started from scratch. So over here, the way I laid it out is on the left, I've got how much I make. And most people at the end of the month, when they get their paycheck, they're like, where in the world did all my money go? And I think even just understanding that it really just kind of opens up your eyes into what comes out of your check before you even get to spend it. So let's say you get a new job, you're making 50,000 a year. That's your yearly pay. Most companies are going to pay you per month. So what I'm going to do is just divide this by 12. Some people will pay every 2 weeks, but if you're a salary employee, it might be twice a month, it might be once a month. It just depends on the company. Health insurance, I would say 175 a month for a single individual is probably pretty good and on average. Some companies are going to charge you way more than that, even if they offer you a plan. But for the sake of what we're doing right now, let me just say 175. 401k, most companies will ask you to participate in a 401k. And it's a good idea. What I usually would say is put in as much as the employer is going to match. So most employers will match 4%. So I would put in 4%. So I'm going to put equals the monthly pay times 0.04. And that tells me that they're going to take 167 out of my paycheck. Now, it's considered after deductions. So what I want you to do is take the monthly pay and subtract the health insurance and the 401k, and from there, you're going to get the after deductions pay. Okay. So that's 38.25 after the deductions. Now, from there, we got sales tax or taxes. Everybody's going to have taxes. Okay. The contributing those things ahead of time will lower some of your tax requirements. Not a lot, but it still matters. So everybody's going to have to pay Social Security and Medicare. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is you pay that and your employer pays that. If you're self-employed, one of the things people don't realize is that you end up paying both taxes. Now you do get a credit for half of the other half, but it still adds up. It's about 10.5%. And when I've been self-employed as a business owner, one of the things that always catches me at the end of the year is just how much I have to pay in terms of Social Security and Medicare. And then we have our federal tax. So we have a progressive tax system, which means the more you make, the more you pay. What a lot of people don't understand is they get this refund back at the end of the year, and you're like, oh, I got a refund. And a lot of times our payroll tax system is such that we end up overpaying. And then at the end of the year, we end up getting money back, which is not a bad thing. So a lot of people use it as a bonus at the end of the year that they can go and do travel or just, some surprise money. But if you do need more back, throughout the month, and you can work with your payroll person to say, hey, is there anything I can do in terms of deductions to make sure I take less out because I need more to live on month to month. So I'm going to use 12%, mainly just for the sake of what we're doing right here. But when you look at your paycheck, you can kind of guesstimate how much they're actually taking out based on a percentage. Okay. So state taxes, I live in the state of Florida. There are no state taxes, but obviously if you have a state tax, it might be 5%. I don't know. It really just depends on the state. And so you'd have to take that as well. So our actual take home pay for this month ends up being, and again, I'm just going to subtract out these two. Yeah, there might be a quicker way to do it, but for the sake of showing you guys, I'm just going to try to make it a little simpler and quick, honestly. So at the end of the day, I've got $3,073. That's for the month. All right. And what I did was I put that equal to over here for take home pay. Right. So you get this brand new job and you're like, oh, I'm making $50,000. I'm doing great. And all of a sudden you look at your paycheck and you're like, oh my gosh, I've only got $3,000. If you even look at it, right? Some people don't even look at it. So now we got to figure out, okay, what do I spend my money on? One of the easiest things to do is look at the beginning bank balance at the beginning of the month and the ending balance at the end of the month. And hopefully you have more than what you started with at the beginning of the month. If you don't, then obviously you're spending more than you're bringing in which case, you have a budget issue. And if you're trying to save for other things, then you need to start figuring out where your money's going. There are plenty of apps out there that do this for you. And, there's different bank services. I tried to use them, and the problem I have is I want to have control over where things are going. I want to see where things are going too. So I like physically going through and just putting them in. And I only do this for a few months. And once I get kind of a trend, then I find that, okay, I have a good idea of where things are going. Now let me try to actually adjust some of them. Whereas if I look at this big spreadsheet or this, sometimes they do this pie graph, it's great, but it's hard for me to really dial down. Plus, I don't really have as much control over it. So that's just my take. All right. So, do you have any student loans? Student loans are unique because the more you make, the more they're going to take out. All right. So I'm going to assume that you walked away out of college with no student loans. If you had any student loans and they come out, then you need to put money there. Credit card debt, right? So did you walk out of college with any credit card debt? If you did, then again, you're going to have to put some in there. Now, the thing with credit cards is they always have just that minimum payment. Well, are you just paying your interest every month, or are you actually trying to pay down principal in order to pay it off? Again, I'm going to assume you have no credit card debt for now. Rent or mortgage. Okay, things have gotten crazy lately. A 1-1 condo or apartment based on where you live, it can be pretty crazy, right? So I'm going to put $1,200 a month. I really don't know where you're watching this from. So for some people, that can be way too little, some way too much, but you get the idea. Just put in whatever you've got there, okay? And you also might be renting with somebody else, so maybe it's less cost than that. But I'm assuming you're living by yourself. So then we have electric and water. I'm going to put about 150 in there. Again, really just depends on where you are, how big the place is, and if you're splitting it with somebody. All right, car. So this is a big one, okay? One of my first purchases out of college was a brand new car, and I really wish that I would have held off because, that car payment strapped me for, 5 years, and nowadays it can be up to 7 years, which is pretty crazy. So I'm going to assume you don't have a car right now. You're just going to keep the one you had for college. But obviously, if you need a car, you're going to have to go in and put some sort of car payment in there, which, that's a whole separate video that we can do that I actually went through with my students, and I said, okay, when you go to buy a car, your car dealer knows everything and they control everything. If you go in with your numbers and know what you can do and what you want to do, then you're more in control and can actually drive the conversation. All right, let's talk about gas. I don't know what kind of car you have, but let's assume you're spending about $40 a week. So $40 a week is about $160 a month. Maybe you're driving a far distance for work every day. It could be more. Maybe you're taking the bus, which case you can adjust that there. Car insurance for a young driver, it's probably in the 125 range, depending on if you've had any accidents, maybe a little bit more. Okay. Internet. So I don't know. Do you want cable or not? A lot of people these days don't have cable. So maybe you're just spending $75 a month on internet. Groceries is a big one. Our family of 7, it's crazy how much we're spending these days. But, if you're by yourself, I'm going to put down $50 a week because you're probably eating out more than you are cooking at home. And I don't know. I find that I like to cook at home a lot. Plus, it saves me a lot of money. But when I was younger, in my early 20s, I ate out a lot more. 1, because it was fun. And 2, because I didn't want to have to cook as much, right? So I was working more. Cell phone. I don't know, are you on your family's plan or your own plan? Let's say 75. Did you buy your phone outright? Are you paying your phone over a term period of 2 years? Which would affect it as well. Streaming services, if they're getting more and more expensive, so Disney, Netflix, Hulu. I don't know what you're doing, but maybe that's 40, $50 a month because you're not having cable. Then we start getting into the fun stuff, okay? And this is where money goes really fast. And I've done this even with my kids at home. I'm like, all right, how much do you think it costs for us to make for a family of seven dinner? And I think, it's usually about $20, $25, depending on what we make. If you go out to eat with that size family right now, you're looking at easily $100 every time. Like I know every time we go out to eat, it's going to be $100 for dinner. So if I'm eating out by myself, it's at least $20. Are you going out with a date? Are you going out with coworkers for lunch and for dinner? At least a couple times a week. So I'm gonna say $200 for eating out, but to be honest, it can be a lot more than that. Entertainment. So again, you're gonna go out with friends. You're gonna go to bars and clubs. You're gonna go to the movies. You're gonna go maybe take a date on a fun I don't even know what people do these days. I haven't been on a date in a long time. So let's just say $200 for entertainment. And again, this is for the month, right? So $50 a week is really not that much. Clothes. This is an interesting one. I don't buy a lot of clothes. I'm fine wearing the same stuff that I've had for years. I told my students this one time. I think I put down like $50, and half the class laughed at me, and the other half the class was like, "Oh, there's no way I'd ever spend that much." So let's just roundabout put 100 a month. Now this is for the month, but for the year, if you think about it, you're going to a new job. You're going to need new clothes, new shoes. You're going to want to go out. You're going to need new outfits for that. So $100 a month, shoes included as well, right? Is not too bad, but you're probably going to pay it more so every few months rather than every single month I'm going to spend 100. And then I put Walmart. Again, I don't know where you are in this part of the country, but or world even. But when I go to Walmart, I'm probably going to spend I don't know, about $100 a month on average. And this is toiletries. Think about stuff for the bathroom, personal products. If you shave, whatever it is, you're going to end up spending probably $100 there. So at the end of the month, I'm down to $438. Okay. I'm sure I'm missing things, right? Because I don't know what you personally spend. So I would go through and look at this and I'd take your actual personal statements and I'd, for the whole month, just put these line items. One of the things I left out was miscellaneous. If I have small things here and there, I'll put it under miscellaneous. I try to keep that under $100 because if it's more than 100, then I know that that's a expense that I'm incurring more often. Okay. All right, so you might look at this and say, man, we've got $438. That's great, right? But here's what starts to come into play, and I talk to my students about this over and over, is what happens when stuff happens, right? So what happens when all of a sudden something breaks, or you have to get a car, or you want to go on a vacation, okay? That's not a lot of money for that month, right? So most of the times what happens is people have to then go put it on credit. Well, then the question is, okay, now you've increased your credit card debt. So now we put all this vacation, we go on this nice vacation and we spend $1,000. Well, I don't have that money. So now I got to put 500, 600 on a credit card. Well, am I going to pay it off all up front or over 2 months? Or do I start taking now monthly payments? I don't know. It really depends on you, but you better make sure you budget there or it's going to start eating away your monthly savings every time. I purposely didn't put savings in. Most people will say, oh, make sure you put 10% away. Here's the thing, right? I know not everybody's going to do that, and I know, people might have the best intentions, but they have more things important to them right now. In which case, maybe you're not putting in savings. If you're not putting in savings, obviously you should. But I think the question is why. All right, things that I didn't think about until I got older, right, and maybe in my 30s, is I really wanted to start a business. And there were more creative ways I found to do it rather than using savings. But what about a house? I didn't put 20% down and I had to pay what's called PMI insurance, mortgage insurance, and it sucks, right? It might be $200 a month that you have to pay only because you didn't have the down payment to do it. And there's different hybrid loans out there, but it's just another thing to think about that if you're not putting savings away, at some point you might need it and it's not there. So, you might want to go and say, okay, I looked at all this and I know I want to put down 10%. Well, okay, that's about, if you put 10% of your take home pay, that's $300. So now your amount left over is down to 138. Your money goes faster than you think. So if you're not planning and not understanding where it all is coming in and out of, then all of a sudden at the end of the year, you've worked hard, you've made $50,000, and you now have $5,000 of credit card debt and you have no idea why. Okay. So the more you can learn to control your own finances, it'll help when you're younger, and it'll really help when you get older or you get married, and all of a sudden now there's two people who are fighting over what should be spent where and how much, and one person likes to spend more than the other, and it's constantly a fight. Kids are expensive. All of a sudden you have kids, and everything starts going up. Obviously we don't know when we're going to have an inflationary period like we have now. So you just have to be prepared for all of it. So hopefully this just gives you a real quick overview of how to actually create your own budget, so that you can, and take a screenshot of this, or maybe pause it, go through, create it in Excel, and then you can kind of play with the numbers. Hope to do more videos like this in the future. If you have anything specific you want to see about, whether it's how to buy a car or what goes into buying a car, maybe some health insurance plans, how to look at what's best. It's not always best to take the lowest deductible one, but for some people it might be 401k. What does that even mean? Is that the best thing to do? What's employer matching and how does that work? Things that you don't really understand until we get out in the real world, and then all of a sudden we're like, man, I wish I would have learned this when I was in school, or I wish I had somebody who could talk to me about this. So if you enjoy it, subscribe, put in some comments about things you might want to see in the future. And one last thing to keep in mind is this is meant to be just kind of a general basic overview for people who have never seen something like this. So obviously if you've already done this, might be new to you, but maybe you picked up some new things. So good luck and create your budget.